is growing day by day, supported by technical and financial partners whose representatives are present here today, and that it is constantly seeking to build synergies with the ECOWAS Commission in order to achieve the common goals of both institutions. Mr. Chairman, under your leadership, ECONEC has recorded a number of significant achievements over the last 2 years. This symposium is one such achievement. Through the convening of this event, ECONEC has provided a platform for all of us present here to reflect on the growing calls for the greater participation and representation of women, youth, and persons with disability in politics. National elections in West Africa represent golden opportunities for such inclusive participation under electoral processes that can not only be perceived as free, fair and transparent and peaceful, but that are actually conducted in the same manner. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the distinguished participants who have graced this momentous occasion with their presence. They've actually been named, so I don't want to repeat it, but this gathering therefore shows that we're all determined to engage in politics and conduct our national elections differently going forward. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in our region of approximately 320 million people, with 52% of the total population being female and 64% made up of people below the age of 25, there are still glaring challenges to inclusive political participation. Recent studies and current statistics affirm the underrepresentation of women and other marginalized groups at all levels of governance, and particularly in political decision-making. While some countries are doing better than others, however, generally speaking, it appears that in spite of all the pleas for parity and inclusivity in political participation and in decision-making, ECOWAS member states are yet to sufficiently mobilize women, youth, and persons living with disability for inclusive participation in the electoral process and for equal representation. Challenges in ensuring equal access to all eligible citizens, regardless of their background, orientation, gender, and physical conditions, still remain at different levels. We must remain mindful that inclusive participation in political processes leads to sustainable peace and stability in the West African region. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight some of these challenges or barriers and proffer some solutions at the same time, if you permit me. First, the legal framework for politics and elections in many places needs to be reviewed to enable greater participation and representation for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. This can be achieved through affirmative action policies or laws which provide for a quota system for the representation of specific groups in society. We see this in legislation in Zambia, Rwanda, Uganda, and South Africa. They have clear examples of a quota system. They also have the reservation of seats for women or the nomination of women from each region as a member of parliament, which is the case in Swaziland. In some instances, gender parity clauses are enshrined in national constitutions. Second, the seemingly or perceived lack of democracy within political parties is a serious barrier to equal representation. To overcome this, political parties can be required under the law to position female candidates on their parity lists through a quota system that is submitted to electoral bodies ahead of the elections. This has been done in Kenya, Burundi, and Senegal. This also holds true for the youth and persons with disability. Third, violence in the political arena, especially gender-based violence, both verbal and physical, also impedes female participation. To address the issue of violence, political parties must sign non-violence pacts which must clearly protect female candidates ahead of elections. In addition, appropriate action should be taken against violators or perpetrators of violence in general, especially gender-based violence, to serve as a deterrent to others. Fourth, and most important of all, Women's groups and female voters in general must be encouraged to support qualified female candidates and must not yield to the pull-me-down syndrome that is often associated with women. Women's group can volunteer to encourage women not only to register as voters, but also to vote. We can also provide civic education to other women, but most of all, we must provide them with a greater understanding of the electoral process and cycle and sensitize them about the power of their votes. This holds true for the youth and persons living with disability. Fifth, it is widely accepted that access to basic or higher education for all is still a recurring problem in some of our countries. Female literacy rates as low as 35% in some places is affecting the participation and representation of women in politics. However, this should not be a deterrent or an impediment to women's participation in politics. In some countries, parliamentary and local council sessions are held in local languages, such as Kinyarwanda in Rwanda, Kirundi in Burundi, and Kiswahili in Kenya, Tanzania, and Zanzibar. Sixth, female candidates must be given support by their own parties, CSOs, meaning civil society organizations, and the media to prepare for elected positions. Support in the development of their communication skills, especially public speaking and interview skills, as well as their preparation of their campaign manifestos can be very helpful. Seventh, in some countries, social and religious barriers are working against inclusive participation and representation. In this regard, traditional and religious leaders should work closely with governments, lawmakers, CSOs, and political parties to promote inclusive participation at all levels of national elections. Eighth, the increasingly important role of money in politics and its corollary on equal access to financial resources has a direct impact on the representation of female youth and persons with disability. In this regard, political parties must be encouraged to lower the fees for female youth and persons with disabilities who are candidates for a period of time in order to achieve inclusiveness. Ninth, the necessity for more civic education and greater awareness of citizens' rights and the need to access information during elections, as stated above, is very important if we are to achieve inclusiveness in our electoral processes in West Africa. Lastly, women should sum up the courage to lead and should not be afraid of losing an election. They can always, or we can always, learn lessons and rebrand ourselves to run for office more successfully in the future. It is the only way we can transform the political landscape in our region and change the narrative in West Africa's political arena. In the words of former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who is my mentor and former boss, I quote, "If your dreams do not scare you, they're not big enough." End of quote. And that is to the women. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to conclude by expressing the hope that the ensuing discussions and exchanges between elections administrators, politicians, experts, scholars, stakeholders, and legislators will produce useful recommendations and action plans for the ECOWAS sub-region. I believe that ECONEC, through this symposium, would have contributed to creating awareness and building knowledge and understanding for the increased participation and representation of women, youth, and persons living with disability. Let me reiterate once again on behalf of His Excellency Jean-Claude Cassibron, President of the ECOWAS Commission, and I, that ECONEC can be assured of the ECOWAS Commission's full, continued, and unwavering support. But before ending, you made a plea about the logistics depot, which is in my home country, Sierra Leone. Lunga is very close to my heart. I want to assure you that we are in phase 2. The second phase, Nigeria has very generously sent us a Lieutenant Colonel Bashir, who is going to be the head of the Lunga depot, who is being supported by a major from the Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces. So hopefully the depot would become operational in the month of August. The second phase is starting, I believe, largely through the efforts of the Commissioner for Administration, Commissioner Tule, The second phase would commence in August and September, I believe. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and thank you for inviting me.